Have you ever swiped your credit card and thought, hey, at least I'm getting points for this? Even though you kind of knew you probably shouldn't have been spending the money anyways.
The classic mental gymnastics. It's fine. I'm basically making money. Meanwhile, the banks are thanking you for playing.
Here's the thing, credit card points aren't evil. They're actually one of the few financial tools where if you know how to play the game, you can actually win this one.
But most people don't realize the game's got rules, and the banks are the ones who made the rules. The trick is learning how to flip the script and use those rules to your advantage.
Today, we're breaking it all down. How to pick the right credit card, maximize rewards, and how to actually turn those points into real value.
And don't worry, we're not just talking about free trips to Bali. We're talking about everyday wins, groceries, gas, travel, whatever fits your life.
We'll show you how to use points like a pro without falling into the trap that makes people overspend, carry balances, and lose more than they gain.
Because the real truth is, the best reward isn't free travel, it's financial freedom.
This is the Fi Guys. Let's jump in.
Welcome to the Fi Guys podcast, the show where we dive deep into the world of financial independence and personal finance. Whether you're just starting out on your journey or well on your way to financial freedom, we've got the insights and strategies you need to achieve your financial goals.
In each episode, we'll provide actionable tips and real-life success stories to inspire and guide you on your path to financial independence. So, grab your notepad and get ready to transform your financial future with the Fi Guys podcast. Let's get started. The Fi Guys is a podcast dedicated to providing general information and insights on a wide range of wealth-related topics. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and guests and do not constitute personalized financial advice.
The content provided in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It should not be considered a substitute for professional financial advice. Your financial situation and goals are unique, and the information provided here may not be applicable or suitable for your specific circumstances.
We, the host and the guests of the Fi Guys, are not acting as your financial advisor. We are not aware of your individual financial situations, risk tolerance, or investment objectives. Any decisions or actions you take based on the information provided on this podcast are your own and made at your own risk. I may be a financial advisor, but I am not your financial advisor. And now that the lawyers are happy, let's get started.
Credit card points aren't evil. They're a tool. Actually, no, I say this. Cut. Credit cards aren't evil. They're a tool. And when used intentionally, they can unlock free travel, cash back, and real life value. In today's episode, we're going to break down how to use them wisely, how to maximize your rewards, and how to avoid the traps that catch most people. Now, Dominic, we've already done this podcast a few times back at episode 30 and 31. So if you want to get a quick take, I recommend going back and listening to those. Definitely don't watch it because that's before our new setup. But what do you remember about those podcasts?
The dark ages where the background was sketchy, the haircut was not very good, and the information was amazing, if I'm being honest. No, so what I remembered from episode 30 and 31 was most people misuse credit cards, and that's pretty common knowledge. There's no surprise there, right? We've all found ourselves in an amount of credit card debt that's like, how did that get there? How did that get that big? But it's a lot worse than we think, and it's a lot worse than we thought. Most people have a disturbing amount of credit card debt. They're living paycheck to paycheck, and they really can't afford more than a $500 surprise bill. But what I didn't realize until I went through those 30 and 31 podcasts was you can actually take advantage of great credit card advantages. While it is a tool, credit cards, I didn't realize how useful the tool really was and continues to be to this day. And it's one of those things where it's a sharp sword, right? It can be used, we'll say it's a sharp axe. It'll help with my analogy coming up next. It's like an axe, right? You can use it to cut down a tree to build a house, or you can cut your arm off, right? It's all depending on how you use this axe. See why it didn't work with a sword? Can't cut a tree down with a sword. But yeah, that was one of the main points that I remembered from those podcasts way back in the day. God, it's a kind of a blast from the past, if you will. But I'm excited to learn more about it and kind of revisit this very, very, very important episode.
Yeah, of course. So one of the big things that people like to call this, they call it credit card hacking. And whenever I tell people that I'm pretty damn good at credit card hacking, people think like, oh, you're hacking other people's credit cards and you're stealing from them. It's like That's not what it really is. What credit card hacking is, kind of in the ethos of financial dependence, means that we're using credit card points strategically to be able to give us upside value, whether that be cash back, free travel, hotels, flights, even cruises, whatever you want to do. So, in part one of today's podcast, I want to talk about how credit card points can be a legitimate financial tool. Because the amount of times I've told people about credit card hacking and they're like, "Oh no, I don't do that kind of stuff. It seems scary to me." I just want everyone to know that this can be a great way to make some extra money, given that you can understand how your payments work and always pay in full. So, points are a form of value that are exchanged. Think of it like a rebate for your spending. Every transaction that you make earns rewards from interchange fees. If you use these payments strategically, this means that you can get real returns on purchases you've already made. But that means that you need to pay the balance in full in order to win the game. Because if you're not paying your balances in full, it doesn't matter how many points you're getting, you are losing points to interest. You are losing money to interest. And that's the biggest trap that the financial banks have made in when it comes to credit card hacking. What's your thoughts,
And
Tom?
when you say pay your balance in full, right? Obviously, if I go out and I spend $100 on XYZ, right? You you want me to come home right then that day and pay it in full, or is there a certain time period, maybe in a year, or when's the correct time period that you should pay it in full, Chris?
Yeah, that's a really, really great one. It's going to depend on the person. So typically the way that I like to run it is I like to pay off my balance before it hits my statement. So for most of my credit cards, I have them all set to hit on the 15th. That's when it hits my statement balance. And we're not talking about this specifically today, but one of the biggest things that holds back your credit score is your credit utilization. And the times that the credit cards know that, hey, this is how much this person used is what hits your statement balance. So what I like to do is pay off my credit cards before it hits that statement balance to show that I only utilize sub 5% of my credit limit. So what that means though is that I'm using my credit card like a debit card. I'm not overextending myself. I'm only spending money that I already have in the bank ready to pay. And that's where most people get injured when it comes to credit cards. They're spending money that they don't have, hoping that in the future they'll be able to have that money to pay for it.
So another question, and more of a statement as well for the listener. Um, this information, while it is great information, and we believe that you should know this, right? You should take advantage of the knowledge and the tools that we're teaching today and next week, right? This information isn't for everyone at every stage, right, Chris? This isn't like beginner friendly. Like I'm 15. I just got my first checking account. I should start credit card hacking. Would you say it's a beginner friendly, or would this a little bit more advanced?
It's going to depend on the person. It's going to depend on their self-awareness and their ability to delay gratification. Too many people, when they get a credit card, they immediately believe, okay, I have $1,000 spending limit, $5,000, $10,000, whatever that credit card's max is. And they believe now I have that much money that had just been added to me. But in truth, that's just credit. And credit means debt. So I now have the ability to put myself in $10,000 more of debt. Do you want to go around doing that? So if we just kind of change the words from credit or leverage to debt, it makes it a lot easier for people. I've met people who are 17, 18 years old, getting their first credit card, starting to build up their credit and get into credit card reward hacking. It's very easy to do. And just like you said at the beginning, it is an axe that you can seriously harm yourself in if you're not being intentional with it, if you don't wake up for a second.
So it could be for someone younger, it could be for someone starting out, but you have to have a level of self-awareness, of discipline, and now it's just a reminder, right? Because when you walk into a store, I mean, they have psychologists that work in the store, worked on the store to get you to buy stuff. So you're working against some very powerful forces, right? We know how powerful Amazon is. We know how powerful TikTok Shop is, right? I see videos all the time where it's like the vacuum that you wanted, it's now $50 off, but they had raised the price and the $50 off coupon is just back at the regular price. So just to, you know, the world is designed to make sure that you spend all of your money and the money you don't have. So be aware of that when you're going out and using these cards because they can get you in a lot of trouble very quickly.
Yeah, and I think that's the most important part. If you're spending money you don't have to get points that you want, you're already losing the game. You need to be able to pay your balances in full. And if that means that you can't use a credit card because you don't have that ability to self-control, to self-regulate, that's okay. Don't get a credit card. It is not worth putting yourself into more financial distress in order to get some cool points and tell people that you're winning. Because that means that you might be winning in this area, but you're losing in a much larger area. You have to be able to pay your balances in full. That's the only way that you can win this game. But if you are able to pay those balances in full, you can get to think that you're paying or that you're playing with interest. Every time that you pay for something, you get interest to you rather than giving it to the bank. It's nothing but pure upside reward. You get to use the bank system against them to get points from them for just spending the way that you would normally spend. So you need to be able to align the credit cards that you get with your lifestyle. Make sure that it's a credit card that you use intentionally and not just kind of willy nilly. And that could be either frequent flyer miles, cards that give you cash back, cards that allow you to travel the world for free. And that's where we're going to talk about next on how to choose the right card for you. But before we get to there, Dominic, any questions that you have or anything the audience might be thinking about?
So, kind of honestly, I think the next step is, I mean, I think you hit it right on the nail, right? Well, Chris, I'm interested. I feel like I'm disciplined. Where can we start? I've heard previously on the podcast you've mentioned NerdWallet, some other sites. Um, I'm excited. Let's keep going. That's what I want to hear.
So in part two of the podcast, this is going to be our main point. How do we choose the right card for ourselves? And of course, this is going to be general in nature. So we can't tell you, listener, exactly which credit card you should get for yourself. But I want to give you a framework to be able to figure out which card might be right for me. And I believe when someone's getting started into credit card world, it says, where is my money already going? Because there's a lot of ways to get credit cards that might get you more points for the place you already spend. Whether that be groceries, travel, dining, you get to pick a card that boosts on what you're already spending on. So you're not going out and trying to bring another part into your life. If you're someone who loves to eat out and you eat out every day, well, maybe you probably shouldn't. But if you're someone who built that into your life, then there are credit cards that can give you 3-4 times rewards on dining out, which is a great way to get it done. And that's a great way just to keep it simple. Because I know that there's people who are like myself. There are other influencers online who say, I have 16, 18 credit cards, and I do too. But that is not what I'm telling our listeners to go ahead and start with. What I'm telling them to start with is to keep it very, very simple. 1 or 2 cards that are able to use pretty much everywhere rather than having 18, 16 cards. I mean, I have a freaking Rolodex of credit cards in my safe right now. And I don't want people to get to that point until they're ready. You need to build up to those skills.
100%, 100%. And I think that's a really great point, right? We're just learning how to crawl right now. We're in the crawling stage. We're not in the, Chris Monzon, Usain Bolt full sprint right now. We're not there yet. Right? It takes a lot of time. And there's a lot of great things that you were mentioning there, right? Shouldn't use a credit card if you don't have the money to pay it off right away. Right? And usually that's more of like a 2x or a 3x, right, Chris? Like if I have $500 in my bank account, right, I shouldn't go out and use my credit card and spend $500, correct? Like I just want to make sure.
No, that's putting yourself into a dangerous place.
Gotcha. Well, that's good. Yeah, so that's good. So it's not, again, what would you say? And I guess this is, and I already know the answer. It depends, right? And I hate that, but it's true. But when is the right time to even get a credit card? Is it co-sign with your parents when you're 15, or when you're 25, when you're disciplined, when you know a little bit more about money? I mean, is there actually a right time to get a credit card, or is it all just it depends?
I think it depends. But I would say the biggest thing that it probably depends on is your ability to delay gratitude. Like your ability, and that's probably one of the strongest abilities that human beings can have, right? Is the ability to delay gratification. To say like, I do want this, but I'm going to hold off till a later time to have it. It's like that classic marshmallow test. If you can, I'll give you 1 marshmallow right now, but if you wait 5 minutes, I'll give you 2 marshmallows. Like those people that are able to do that can really make upsize rewards. And it's the same thing for credit cards. You have to have that ability. If you're someone who says, if whatever credit card limit I get, I now have that money and I must go and spend it before someone comes and takes it away from me. A credit card is not right for you because you're going to get yourself into trouble. You have to be able to understand that any amount of debt that I take, any amount of credit that is against me is a negative from my net worth. So to your point, if I have $500 in my bank account and I have no other assets, that means that my net worth right now is $500. If I go and spend $500 on my credit card, that minuses from my $500, making me worth zero. And unfortunately, most people aren't even worth zero. Most people are worth negative numbers. Most people have $500 in the bank account, but they have $2,000 in credit card debt, making them negative $1,500. And for some people, it's even much, much higher. For most Americans, it's much, much higher. And that puts you into a place that makes you desperate, that makes you think short term, and that continues to perpetuate the cycle. And that's exactly what we're trying to break here. But if you are someone who is not in that situation, who will not put themselves in that situation, then being able to use credit cards strategically is one of the best hacks that I know of in the financial independence space, in the finance space, because it really is like having free money for spending on things that you already spend on. My wife and I have been able to travel to Japan, to Africa, to Bora Bora, to parts of South America for free because of credit cards. And for so many people to say that credit cards are bad, yes, nothing's good or bad, but thinking makes it so, depending on how you choose to use it. And the way that we use it is extremely strategically, so that next year, my wife and I could take her parents to Italy for 2 weeks for free because of all the work that we're putting in through credit cards. And with that being said, I want to talk about smart ways to maximize your points. I've been doing this for over a decade now, using credit cards strategically, and there's some really big things that I want to be able to teach you guys. And the biggest thing is using sign-up bonuses and taking advantage of them strategically and responsibly. Sign-up bonuses are probably one of the best ways to go ahead and get upsized rewards and a bunch of points deposited into your account. And what this means is that you're able to find a credit card that says, hey, Dominic, if you get this credit card, you're approved for it. You have 3 months, 6 months, 5 months maybe to go ahead and hit a predetermined spending amount, whether that be $3,000, $5,000. Some of the credit card rewards and the business cards that I have been up to $30,000 in 6 months, which is a lot of money. So this is where I'm saying it needs to be strategic. But right now we're in the holiday season. So maybe you're someone who says like, hey, I know I'm going to spend a lot during this time. I'm buying gifts for the kids, buying gifts for my family. This might be a time to do that. You can go ahead and apply for a credit card that has one of those rewards attached to it, saying, hey, if you in 3 months are able to spend $3,000, we're going to deposit $60,000 into your credit card for 60,000 points directly to you. You can go ahead and do that. If you can win it, then there it is. You get 60,000 points, which most credit cards are 2 to maybe 1 time spend. That means you'd have to spend $60,000 to get 60,000 points, or you can spend $3,000 in a predetermined time to get those points. And of course, I'm just coming up with random numbers. They're always changing all the time on how much you have to spend and what kind of points you're going to get.
And what would be the kind of points to money ratio? I mean, obviously it's not, I get 60,000 points. I now have $60,000. What's kind of I wish, right? That would be insane. But what is that point to money to reward ratio, Chris?
So it depends on how you use it. And this would probably be worth maybe doing over a few podcasts, but we're not going to do that just because of how deep the rabbit hole goes in being able to do that. What I'd recommend is going to some blogs that we're going to talk about later on in the podcast to figure out what. But the way that I try to value my rewards is 2 cents per point. So say you have 6,000 or say you have 60,000. What a lot of people would say is most people value it at 1 cent per point. So that means that you have $600 or 60,000 points is $600 of value. But if you're good at this game, if you know how to use your points strategically, you can typically get 2 times on points. So that means that those 60,000 points could be $1,200 in value. There have been times that my wife and I have been able to use it to get it up to 4 or 5 cents per value, meaning that $60,000 was worth $3,000, $2,500. And, when you're someone like my wife and I who are crazy and we have businesses and all this stuff, we have millions of points. And those millions of points can be tens of thousands of dollars in free travel. but it all depends on how you use it.
And you're kind of saying that the best way to maximize it is if you're an entrepreneur, if you have a business, right? But an average person who might not have a business, might not be an entrepreneur, they can also take advantage of this, right? You don't have to be, a finance guru. You don't have to be a big time entrepreneur, anything like that, right? You can do this as an average. Well, you shouldn't do this as an average person because the average person, I guess, would be in a lot of credit card debt already and not respecting. And, this podcast is probably for maybe like what, the 5%, and not like the top 5%, but just like 5% of the population in America, you would say, Chris, or
Probably. It's probably a pretty small amount of people because
yeah.
most people say like, "Oh, I'm using my credit card strategically to get points," but in reality, they're getting used by the bank, and that's kind of the biggest point that we're trying to show here is that you have to be thoughtful. You have to have intention behind everything that you're doing.
And I guess that's a good life way to that's a good way to live, right? You should have intention with everything that you're doing and really think long term before you make these decisions that could impact you for a very long time. Because I'm sure you've heard some horror stories of, I did credit card hacking and it went sideways. It's like, no, you just didn't manage your risk. You didn't manage your money well and you overspent like
Yeah,
crazy.
I've heard it thousands of times of people saying like, "Oh, the credit cards are evil because what I did to it," and that's like saying, "Oh, this hammer is evil because I decided to bludgeon somebody with it." Like, it's just a tool, and whatever you decide to do with it's on you. But to answer your question, yes, anyone can get into this. I mean, given that you have a high enough credit score, if you're in like the low 300s, 500s, like good job for getting down that low. Like you really must have tried to be down there. Um, or maybe not 500s, but if you're in the 300s, like you really try to get down there. For most credit card hacking, you want to be 680, 720 and above, ideally, to be able to get some of these more premier cards. So that might be a good way to say, can someone start to do this? Is they need to have a high enough credit score to be able to do so. But to answer your question, anyone can do this. You don't need to be an entrepreneur. There are so many personal cards that you can apply for today. You don't need to have a business or anything. And the nice thing is the banks are not the IRS. What is determined as a business is extremely loosey-goosey. Even if that means I drive Uber on the weekends, I do DoorDash, I sell some stuff on eBay, you can sign up for a credit card under your own social security number, just saying that you have a solo entrepreneur, and you can actually apply for credit cards. That's how my wife actually started doing it because she is a veterinary doctor. She just said that, oh, I do um, pet care on the side. And she was able to start her first credit card, her first business credit card that way. And then we have the Fi Guys. I have my Mom's on Wealth business. That's how I'm able to do it. So typically what I say is people can play this one player mode where it's just them applying for credit cards through their personal self. They can do a 2-player mode if they have a partner with them, maybe a spouse or a girlfriend, and that person can go ahead and do that. Now you're playing 2 players, but you can even do it 3 players, 4 players, 5 players if you start adding businesses behind you guys. So now it's just not just me. It's me. It's one of my businesses. It's my second business. It's my wife. It's her second business. Now we have 5 people all accruing points together. And yes, it's a lot of management. It's a lot of work. We have a pretty big spreadsheet that we work on all this stuff, but we've built up to that. And that's not what I'm telling people to do. I'm telling people to start with one credit card and go from there.
When you said, you don't have to play this on 2-player mode, I was like, is he gonna say what I think he's gonna play? He's like, you can play it on 3-player or 4-player mode. I was like, yeah, your wife gets one, side chick gets one, your wife's side chick gets one. And then it's like, if you have a business, your business gets one, then your wife's business gets one, then your side chick's business gets one. I'm just like, is he gonna go down this rabbit hole right now?
It's
Um,
crazy.
it's crazy, man. It's crazy. It's definitely not a pyramid scheme. And then we pool our points together, and then just the wife and I go on a trip, and we just leave the side chicks, you know, back in Cleveland. They can stay. They can stay at the house. That's definitely not what we're saying, but
No.
definitely hilarious. Definitely hilarious. So this game is a high level game. It's a dangerous game. It's a fun game if you know how to play it right. And most don't, but you can if you're disciplined. If it's kind of interesting when you were talking and you're like, you got to try to get to 300 on your credit score. And I was thinking, I was like, man, I mean, like the difference between like Chris and someone who's in 300, I mean, it's really not that different. I mean, Chris has 18 cards and 300 has 18 cards. And they're just used very differently, and they're paid on time, and they don't, use too much of their credit utilization. I'm like, they're really not that different, except one has an elite level of discipline and the other none at all. So I guess that's kind of, I don't know, it cracks me up. You're killing me over here mentally. I'm laughing internally.
Yeah, there's a few ways I could think about that politically that I'm not going to bring up. That's kind of funny. But the big thing when it comes to the credit cards is you never spend more money than you intended to. Don't spend extra money just to hit some random arbitrary number. And that's just one way to accrue a large amount of points is to take advantage of signing bonuses. Another great way, and this is one that I recommend doing if you're not, because I don't want people, regardless of what I do, I don't want people to go and open up a bunch of cards to get a bunch of signing bonuses. The reason me and my wife do it is because we do it strategically to be able to accrue a mass amount of points and then use it pretty quickly. But what most people should do is get one, maybe two cards that give them bonus categories that they can spend their money with intention. And some of those might be gas, dining, travel, grocery stores that could give you 3 to 5 times points. So some people will go to the store, buy groceries, and they'll get 1 times points. So say they get a $100 bill, they've got 100 points there. But there are some credit cards that will give you 4 times points on dining or 4 times points on being able to go out to, or being able to go to the grocery. So if you were to use one of those 4 times multipliers on it, you can go to the grocery store. That $100 just got you 400 points. What my wife and I do is I have a card that gets me 4 times on dining. So recently, a bunch of our friends and I went out to a really fancy dinner. The bill came out. It was over $1,000. And I was just like, hey guys, don't worry about it. I got this. Threw my credit card down. We ended up just playing Venmo. Everyone just Venmo'd my wife and there it was. And we got ourselves 4,000 points right there. It's almost silly how easy it is, but you have to be intentional. You have to think these things through.
And I guess that's the most difficult part about it. Can you be intentional? Can you be disciplined? Can you play the game? I mean, really, it's like driving at like 150 miles an hour. We'll say 100 miles an hour, right? You got trees on the left, you got trees on the right, you got the road, and it's swerving, right? And you stay on the road, right? That's kind of what we're talking about here. Like, it's kind of like rally car racing. On the left, we have bankruptcy. On the right, we have, honestly, probably more bankruptcy, right? And right here in the middle, we've got a beautiful path that can lead us to a great life and a lot more fun than you typically would go on. Because to be honest, Chris, I mean, you make, we don't need to get into it, but you do well for yourself and your wife does well for herself, right? But a lot of these trips you probably wouldn't have gone on them to Africa, Japan, to Italy in the future with her parents. That really wouldn't happen, right?
No, definitely not. We could not travel the way that we travel if it was not for credit card points. Or if we did travel the way that we travel, it would be once a year, maybe once every 2 years, rather than being 2 or 3 times a year traveling pretty nicely.
Be in that 300 range.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a fun game. It's a game worth playing if you have the skills and the discipline and the intention to kind of play the game. It's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah. And here at the Fi Guys, we talk about the numbers and the math is really important. But in actuality, 80% of personal finance is personal. And the other maybe 80 to 90% of personal finance is personal. And then the other 10 to 20 is the actual finance. It's the actual math sides of things. So I want to talk about the mindset of playing the game well. Because the mindset, that is the personal. That's how you're actually going to be able to use these credit cards strategically is by understanding the game. And you need to be strategic, not a collector of points. There's too many people that I've met who will proudly say to me, like, I have millions of points. I'm so smart. It's like, yeah, that's great. But what's your intention behind that? What are you going to do with that? You don't need millions of points. What you really need is a system. And you need to treat every single dollar or every single point like it's an employee. So if you're able to earn 2 to 5% back with paying no interest, then that game is working for you. And then we need to make sure that we're redeeming intentionally. We're redeeming our points quickly because all they're going to do is lose value. There's never been a time in history that the credit card rewards company is like, hey, you guys have 100,000 points. Actually, now that's worth even more. They're always devaluing it, just like how our dollars are getting devalued. And unlike with our dollars where we can go and invest in order to try to beat inflation, there is no way to invest these credit card points. The only way you can invest those credit card points is to put it into something, is to travel, is to put those points and make them into memory dividends by spending with intention to go and do something that you wouldn't do normally. You need to use those points on meaningful experiences, not random ass flexes of telling people how many points you have. Because it's just like your gym routine. Nobody cares. Unless I ask you about it, you should not be telling me about it. Use your points strategically, get where you want to go with them. That's how you're going to do it, by actually having a system. Hey, where do you want to go in 3 years? Not I'm going to get all these points and then decide where I'm going to go from there. My wife and I, we will do it years in advance sometimes, saying, hey, we're going to go to Australia, we're going to go here. What credit cards do we need now? What points do we need in what ecosystems in order to get us the points that we need to go on this trip? And of course, things change. Of course, points change, the values change, everything changes. But at least we have an intention where we need to go, and then we can figure it out along the way as the world unfolds. It's not just what I'm trying to teach you here in credit card land. This works in every single system. Once you see the way broadly, you see it in all things. And if you can use this in credit cards in a very dangerous game, you can apply this to every part of your financial journey.
And maybe this is a wake up call for the listener who's listening about discipline, about living a life of intention. You could never imagine the life, the beauty, the magic that's on the other side of discipline. I mean, everything that is great is on the side of discipline. So I hope you take this podcast with a great amount of importance, not just for credit card hacking, right? But for living an intentional life. And really, that's kind of the quote of the day, right? Living with intention. But I think it's so interesting, Chris, and I don't think I've heard this anywhere else online that, hey, I want to go to Australia in 2 years. So this is the card we're going to get, and this is what we're going to do. And we're kind of planning around it. Most people think when I'm planning a trip, I need to research hotels, need to research local food, right? Is there any laws I need to be aware of? Is there any travel restrictions? And you take it a step further. You say, well, how can we accomplish this at a more efficient way via credit card hack? And I think that's a really interesting take that honestly, I feel like more people need to know about this. This is really interesting stuff. And I'm excited to talk more about it on Friday and as we continue on this episode. But is there any other points you kind of want to share with the listener?
Yeah, there's too many main points, and one of them we've kind of been touching on the entire time, but I really do want to talk about the dangers of credit card hacking, but more importantly than just the dangers, because I think we've already done that, is how do we avoid those dangers? How do I not, if I'm going 100 miles down the road, how do I not veer left or right and hit one of those trees? And the first thing is that overspending kills your benefits. So if you're someone who says like, I need to spend this amount to get these points and I'm trying to figure out ways to spend money, you're probably doing it wrong. The average consumer spends around 12 to 18% more when they're chasing points. Because in the back of their mind, they have a reason like, oh, it's okay, I'm making money by doing this. But if they're being honest with themselves, they're really not making money. So you really need to make sure that the cards that you're getting, you can actually use in your real life. Because I can even say from personal experience, when I get some of my personal credit cards, it's like a $3,000 or $5,000 spending limit in 3 months. That's pretty easy for us to hit. We can do that. But I've gotten business credit cards. Go for it.
I'm sorry. So you said a $3,000 to $5,000 spending limit. Or are you talking about like an introductory?
A spending amount. Like you need to hit this target amount. Yeah.
Gotcha.
That's pretty easy for us to hit in a few months. But I've also gotten credit cards that say, hey, if you want this huge amount of points for business credit cards, you have to spend $30,000 in 3 months, 6 months. And I've even found myself going out of my way to like, oh, let's go to dinner tonight. Like, why not do that where we normally wouldn't, just in order to hit this spending limit because we feel like it's free money. So you really need to be careful of that because you could put yourself into really bad situations. Like when my wife and I were moving from Arizona to California, we were refurnishing the house. And at that time we decided, hey, let's get one of these business credit cards with a $30,000 limit in order to hit that. Because in general, we wouldn't be spending $30,000 in 3 or 6 months. That's not the way that we roll. But in that time, that made sense for us. And I still found ourselves overspending. So you really need to be intentional. You need to be honest with yourself. The easiest person for us to lie to is ourselves. So you need to make sure that you're doing that, you're not doing that. Because any interest that you pay on your card erases all the gains of points. Most of these reward credit cards have average interest rates of 20 to 30%. I don't care how good you are at credit card points, you are not beating 20 to 30% interest. 1 month of interest is equal to a year of points being gone. 1 month of interest is equal to a year of points being gone. So you need to be aware of that dopamine trap, that trap of I'm seeking something, I'm almost there, because you will destroy everything that you get if you are paying more on credit cards, and especially if you end up getting into that cycle. That's how the credit card company wins this game, is they promise you all of these amazing things, all these points, the ability to travel, and they know that most likely 70% of the people, 80% of the people are going to end up in this debt trap. And they're going to get stuck in this rabbit hole of going down it over and over and over. You need to be self-aware. You need to be able to stay that. You need to protect yourself and your credit score moving forward. So you need to be able to apply for new credit cards strategically and avoid closing old credit cards every 3 seconds. We've already done a credit card or how to understand your credit score, and we can always redo that here in the next few weeks. People can understand that better, because it is everything that you do. There is no solution. There's only trade-offs when it comes to finance, when it comes to everything. You need to understand all of this stuff. Now, before we get into it, I do have one more point, but what do you think, Dominic?
No, I think it's I think you know, welcome to the rabbit hole is what I'll say. Welcome to the rabbit hole. If this is your first episode of the Fi Guys, welcome, right? If this is your first kind of lesson on credit card hacking, welcome. Hey, the hole only gets deeper and it only gets a little bit more confusing. But here with your 2 guides makes it easier to navigate. And if you're not already following, I recommend doing so. I recommend liking the podcast, maybe even rating us on Spotify, but that's being generous. Credit card hacking is a interesting and fun game, right? For someone who is for someone like Chris, right? They're obsessed with the finance, right? They love gamifying systems. They love that. They take pleasure in that. They enjoy it, right? That's part of their fun. Others might not feel that way. They might look at finance like, man, my parents grew up with bad financial habits. I have bad financial habits. Money itself stresses me out. And that's really common. It's sad how common it is. But the more you learn about finance and in areas, you might not immediately utilize, right? For me right now at my stage, I'm not utilizing credit card hacking, right? That's just not the stage I'm in. Do I have the discipline? Yeah. Do I have trips I'd probably want to go on? Sure. But I'm just not ready to use my mental energy in that direction right now. And that's okay. Like Chris always says, personal finance is personal. It's personal to you and what goals you have. And living with intention only helps you get there in the most efficient and best way possible. So even if you're not going to use this today, tomorrow, or even next year, knowledge is still great to have, because down the line, you can use it. But please don't just be listening for the sake of entertainment. Because like we always say on the podcast, I'm going to butcher it. I'm going to butcher it. We always say it, and I think I'm always going to get it, but education without action is just entertainment. There we go. I jinxed myself. If you're watching the podcast on YouTube or Spotify, you'll see me throw up the crossed fingers. I'm like, oh man, I hope I say it right. It's a tongue twister. I always mess it up. But it's always important to tell yourself that you're good with money. Chris said something 2 weeks back that I absolutely love. You have to instill in yourself that I am a person who's good with money. You have to have those positive affirmations and that self-belief. And for me, the last 2 weeks, I've been waking up in the morning, hopefully, right? Every morning. And I tell myself, man, I'm great with money. I'm a great investor. I'm a great podcaster, great content creator. I love what I'm doing. I'm a great baker. I made some cinnamon rolls. You'll hear about it on Friday. So any final points you want to add, Chris? I know there's one more point you want to add before we get out of here and we move on to the Friday episode in a few days.
Yeah, we'll also have an action step, but I think one of the biggest things that you touched upon there is perspective. And when we're talking about perspective, especially when it comes to these credit card points, we're using credit card points. And if you're not there right now, that's okay. But use these points as part of the bigger plan. Points equals leverage, not wealth. So if you think I'm going to build all these points up and I'm going to be wealthy with it, that's not the way this game works. You get to use it to build leverage, to create memories, to be able to do things that normally you wouldn't do with your money. That's why I love using points, because I know that, hey, I already spent this money. I already have these points. Let's go and do something fun with it. Because when I have money, I get to know, hey, I can save this. I can do things with this. With my points, I don't have that attachment to it like I do with money. So I want you to use your points to reduce your expenses, not just to justify new ones. The goal isn't to beat the bank. It's to align your money with your values. True financial independence isn't about hacks. It's about clarity. And points are just one lever in a much larger system of financial independence. And it's a very dangerous lever. It's a lever that we've been trying to talk about the entire time, that yes, you can use this lever and it's amazing, and you can really, really hurt yourself. So this week's action step is I want you to explore one new credit card if it makes sense for you. And that means I want you to go ahead and check. There are so many blogs out there, whether that be Chris Hutchins, All the Hacks, NerdWallet, the Points Guys, Bankrate, for side-by-side comparisons to look for what cards have a high sign-up bonus right now that might align with upcoming expenses like the holidays. Are there any credit cards that have good cash back in case I don't want to even get into the credit card game? And just as a reminder, cash back usually is not the best redemption offer, but it's better than using nothing. It's better than just using your debit card if you have the ability to stay consistent and to not overspend. Are there any credit cards that have good transfer partners? That's something we didn't even talk about in this podcast. So I definitely recommend going and listening to episode 30 and 31, where we talk all about transfer partners, because that's something that is very important on way to redeem your points for higher than just 1 cent value. And pro tip, I always say to calculate the value of the points versus the annual fee, because that's something we didn't even talk about today, that all of these premier credit cards have annual fees. And there are ways to reduce those annual fees. There are ways to negotiate those annual fees. And worst comes to worst, you just cancel the credit card. The amount of times I've heard people say, I can't get into the credit card game because I can't pay for this ongoing expense for the rest of my life. And I just say, you only have to do it for a year, then you can cancel the credit card. And they're like, I can't do that because my credit score. Most people don't understand what's going on when it comes to personal finances. So they just move by their feelings. And their feelings are often wrong. So in closing, credit card points are a powerful tool when used intentionally. If you're able to play the game and not let the game play you, you can use these rewards to go to free travel, to make experiences, to have memories that will never go away. It's so much more than just free travel, though. It's about financial freedom. And this is just a driver to get you there and to live a life with intention, and one that you will love. Dominic, would you mind closing us out for Friday?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, guys, that's going to do it on today's episode. If you didn't learn something, I don't think you were actually listening. So I would go back and start over and listen back once again. But hopefully you did take a lot of knowledge out of this episode, as I did. Learned a lot, and I hope you guys did too. If you're new here, make sure to follow. We'll be posting podcasts Monday and Friday. And if you're on YouTube, there's a little mailbag on Wednesday that I highly recommend. Unless there's a guest that week, we don't have a mailbag, but usually there is. And it's always a bunch of fun, hot tea, good gossip, where people write into us and we kind of give our best advice, whether that's financial advice, life advice, or anything in between. We're the Fi Guys. I'm Dom. He's Chris. We'll see you guys back here on Friday. And remember to make intentional decisions. Later, guys.
This video podcast is sponsored by Monzon Wealth. The content in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. We do not endorse specific products or services. Past performance does not guarantee future results. The opinions expressed are those of the host and guests, not the podcast sponsor.
It is crucial to consult with a qualified financial advisor or professional who can provide advice tailored to your specific needs before making any financial decisions, investments, or taking any other actions. If you are seeking specified help, you can reach out to Chris at monzonwealth.com.